Hello, welcome to KS Home and Garden. Today is July 10th, 2023. I'm out here checking out the garden after a heavy day of downpours yesterday on July 9th. I'm in zone 6B in northeast Pennsylvania. Right here, what you're looking at are 3 bluebell salvia plants. These were put in the ground about a month and a half ago. I had started them inside of the seed starter trays. They were in there for about a month or so, and this is what I'm getting at this point. So look, I'm starting to see the flower spike that's going to come up on this one. Here is the flower spike that's going to come up on this one, and interestingly, the smallest plant seems to have at this point the most vibrant flower spike. In the back I have some blue better. In the back I have some blue fescue ornamental grass. I put a couple of those in. I interspersed some onions. Right here is a beefsteak tomato plant that's starting to put out fruit. As a matter of fact, they're starting to actually grow nicely here. Have several of them on there. Over here I have a cherry tomato plant. This is what they refer to as the large cherry tomato plants. And FYI, I did not start these from seed. These were volunteers that came up in different places, either in soil that I put in pots or in the ground, and I simply moved them to where I wanted them to grow if they weren't there already. Down here there is a volunteer plant. This is a squash of some type, I believe. Right next to that is a lunchbox pepper that's actually produced already. And here is another pepper plant. So I planted this one. I have to get it right because I referred to it as ghost pepper, but it's not. Okay, this is a Scotch bonnet pepper. That's what this is. So this is a very hot pepper used in Caribbean dishes. Over here I have a lunchbox pepper plant, and as you see, this is already put out some peppers right there. Can you see that? There you go. I picked a few. I love those because they're sweet. You can just pick them right off, no heat at all. There's my Utah celery plant growing. Right here I have some thyme. And oh, look what we just found. Look at that. That is a June bug. Now what do we call that? That's the beetle that comes. So that means these suckers are out and they must have started to hatch. I did use grub control, which keeps them down, but that means I'm going to have to start watching my plants because they will destroy those very quickly. Here is a lavender plant, and while I'm here, why don't I just flick that guy off? There you go. Go about your business. Okay, by the way, the plant that this is on is stevia. This is another stevia. And more blue fescue. I have so much of this because I'm actually going to plant it out later in the year. Back here are volunteer tomatoes. Okay. This is echinacea. It just comes up by itself. And in these pots, I have the mulch that's on top is actually came from my daylilies. So when they go through their cycle, you know, they produce that nice brown kind of like where the plant dies and the leaves turn brown. So I take that, it's a good mulch, and I drop it on top. Interesting thing here, I have a plant, I believe this is a lupine. I had no idea how long this would grow. That is from a plant way over here in this section. So I can say that it's a success, but I was unprepared for it. So it's actually taken over the space, which is fine because I'm learning. Okay, there's a hollyhock that has gone through its second year. It flowered and it's going to die. at the end of the season. Okay, and right here I also have some butterfly weed. I want to show you that. That's specifically, you know, to bring the butterflies in. And I actually have swallowtails, and I've seen swallowtail caterpillars, no monarchs yet. I have some bachelor buttons back there. Supposedly those are going to attract some hummingbirds. I wanted to have a lot of plants for the pollinators to come in and want to grab. I also have blanket flower. There you go. I had some of those, so I just stuck them in the ground. I had one that would pop up, it would drop seeds. So I decided I would just give this a chance. Over here, I have French gourmet carrots. Look, there's one right there, kind of sticking right up out of the ground. They're small. They're like a bulb size and golf ball size when they're mature. They're really good. There we go. There's one down in there. Yep. And here I have the larger variety of carrot. I'm happy actually because while I have greenery here, I don't have what I think is an excessive amount of greenery, because I've had that happen and didn't really get a good carrot harvest. I'm not really going to pull anything up, but I can see that they are forming down here. What's this? See? There it is. See? You can see something forming there, so I'm going to get carrots. Okay. Now, you're going to notice that I have Brussels sprouts plants all over the place. And the reason that is because whenever I fail at something, I'll just put a bunch in different places and see how they do. So these are tiny Brussels sprouts. It's also hot. So I thought it would have gone to seed yet, but I guess I was wrong about that, because it looks like those are actually going to form. Okay, this is actually a Pekin pepper, which is another nice hot pepper to cook with. This has been in the ground about as long as that Scotch bonnet pepper. And look, I have peppers. First time I've noticed that. I gotta tell you, I'm a little scared to try them. I'm going to, because I'm not really a hot pepper guy, but I do hot sauce, so that may work for that. Okay, and right here is a stevia I just stuck in. That's a marigold. We have some basil there on the side, green basil, and also purple basil. Okay. Right here we have a Black Beauty eggplant. Just stuck this in here actually because it popped up. It's another volunteer, and it's actually doing well. Over here I have planted some beans, some bush beans that I want to come up. I put 4 in there. You know, what it tends to happen is that I end up with much more food than my wife and I can actually eat or even give away. So I'm trying to cut back. Okay, that is a sweet pea plant that has seen better days. Over here we have some alyssum, and this comes up on its own. The main shore here is constantly coming in and pulling out that grass that grows around it. Here I have some kale, and next to the kale, that is not the regular lawn grass. That is actually winter rye. I stuck that in and I chopped it down, but I didn't get all the roots, so it keeps coming back. But I haven't had to fertilize these plants because I think that the winter rye is actually fixing enough nitrogen, along with the other amendments I have in there. You might have seen my other videos. I do worm castings. That seems to be absolutely the best thing in the world to grow plants, because everything you see here has worm castings, blood meal, and has bone meal. You know, sometimes I'll put a little fertilizer, but that's the basics. Okay. And here is a sweet potato plant that's taking off nicely. Okay, I'm happy about that. This is from slips that I grew from from store-bought sweet potatoes. I did buy organic ones, and I never really buy like actual seed sweet potatoes. I find that it's not really necessary. Okay, there's another dark opal basil, and here is a volunteer squash plant. of some type. I'm not sure if it's squash or zucchini. I'm trying to learn the formation of the leaves, but what I can tell you is that this is another volunteer, and I don't know exactly what it is, but a lot of stuff I'm not even trying to replant because it just comes up on its own. Now these spaces are going to be cleaned up, and I'm going to start to put in some crops that should do well as the season cools off. Here's an echinacea plant. It's in a pot. You'll see that I have echinacea spread around here just because it grows on its own. And back over here, I have this is not a cherry tomato. Oh, this is actually another volunteer that I put in. See, I let my plants go to seed, and when the volunteers pop up, they're nice and healthy because they've come up on their own where they want to come up. This is a homestead tomato. This is actually always a plant that does very well for me. I really enjoy growing this. See? Look at that. Plenty of tomatoes on there. Okay. This one hasn't done much. I got flowers, but no tomatoes. And here, I cleaned this out. This was where I had some elephant garlic, but I just stuck in some seeds, different bean seeds, and I probably dropped in a Swiss chard seed. I know there's not much space there, but this fabric pot actually tore, it got hit with the lawnmower weed whacker. So I'll probably just make a hole down in the bottom and let the roots just stick a stick in different places, and then let the roots go down into the ground. And at the end of the season, maybe just spread the soil out here, and if not, I'll just pick it up and put it in another spot. And here's my little helper. Hey, Max. Hey, buddy. Max is prowling around the garden. He's actually interested in the rabbits that like to hide under my shed. They tend to run now because they see him. Okay, look at that. There's a bee having his morning meal right there on my comfrey plant. This is Russian comfrey, so it's not the comfrey that's going to spread all over the place. However, it is very easy to grow. I can simply cut a piece of the root and stick it in the ground, which is what I did over here, and it just pops up on its own. Over here is something that might have been hidden in a lot of folks' videos, but this is just my, I don't know, this is like a, I don't know, it's a dumping ground right now. But there was lettuce growing here. This right here is another, this is another Brussels sprouts plant. I'm just growing this, and I'm going to chop all this down just to add some organic matter here, because this particular bed is pretty much clay. My soil is clay, a lot of it. So this actually will be fertile. And just an FYI, what I'm actually using for fertilizer in most cases is worm castings. And right there is a mustard green plant that came up on its own. And you can see the vegetables and things spread out that I just tossed over here. And right here I have clover that pops up, which is okay because that's actually going to fix nitrogen into the soil. Here goes some Shasta daisies. They come up on their own every year. I don't water them. And here are some echinacea plants. Those come up on their own. Now, okay, compost bin. Every gardener needs a little compost bin. Here is a cucumber plant, another volunteer, that actually came up in a pot, believe it or not, where I'd reused soil for a cactus. So I actually just pulled this out of that pot just before the rain and tied it up onto this, let's see what this is. Oh, this is bamboo. You might have noticed in the other section with the tomatoes, I have sunflowers growing up right next to the tomatoes. I'm going to let them grow up that plant if it can take the weight. I like using natural stuff. It just looks nice to me. And here's a kale plant that just came up by itself. Look at that. Okay. And here I have compost under there, and I have a bunch of the greens that I've cut down to make space. And that is clay from planting trees. Yeah, planted those trees. So that probably just going to get it off the property. Okay, here's more butterfly weed. Now I see that, look at that. See, all kinds of insects like the butterfly weed. You see that? See that? Oh, the poor guy, did he make it? He didn't make it, did he? Oh, he's alive. He's just so wrapped up into eating. I thought he was dead. Look at that. Okay. That must be good. Okay, now, more Brussels sprouts. I thought that these would have gone to seed by now. You know, I chopped off the top because I saw in the video you should do that, and they actually are starting to produce the sprouts on the plant. I'm going to chop off some more of the greens, so I'm going to have some Brussels sprouts, and at the very least, the leaves. I actually cook those leaves same way you'd cook like a collard greens. I do the same thing with broccoli greens, and they taste pretty good. They're actually a little bit sweeter as far as my taste, and they don't take as long to cook as collard greens. Okay, there is another Brussels sprout plant, and I had cut off some leaves. I noticed that that information is correct. There was nothing. Now I am starting to get some sprouts. We'll see how this goes since it's getting hot. I won't be disappointed if it goes to seed, because now I know how to grow it. I'll just need to grow it in the right season. Here is a little okra plant. This is the third time I'm trying with okra because our temperatures have been so erratic that they went up and down. So they go up to the 90s. We had 90s in February here in Northeast PA. And anybody who knows about Northeast PA knows that that is really an anomaly. And then the temperature would drop back to the 30s. So I had a few plants here. It killed them, but I have two now. And I have to grow that because that's for my mom's. She loves okra. She's from the South, and that was a staple in her diet. This was here to stop the birds from eating those small plants. Okay, so that's an okra plant. Okay, here is, another tomato plant. There we go. And there are marigolds. Now, here's another okra plant. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these leaves off here because these leaves are going to block the sun. I want that to get full sun. It'll grow fast. I'll get okra from it, and I'll be good. Okay, this is flowering oregano. I leave that because the pollinators like it. So you'll see herbs and different things in different states. I leave them because they all play a kind of like a synergistic role with each other. The other thing I have noticed is this year I didn't need to use any sort of pesticide. I've watched plants look like they were getting devoured, and what I've read is that if you leave the plants in place with the pests, the predators that kill them will show up. And sure enough, that has happened. I have plants that were eaten down, and a bit later I start to see additional insects, and those plants start to grow back out more vigorously. Now here I have some sunflowers. I just like them, and they also are good for clay soil. And last thing I'll show you, they're done, but these are nasturtiums. See, it's been raining and it's been hot, so they're suffering, but this is a great plant to make a tincture out of. I made a tincture last year, and my wife and I used that actually as our, how can I put it, I'm not going to say medication because it's not medication, but as our way to deal with colds or flu as they were coming on. Whenever we felt anything, we just take a few drops of the tincture and it would be gone, or it would be much less in duration as far as either severity or time than normally. So I'm growing that for this plant for that specific reason. It's the flowers that are best, but I also use the leaves. So now let's go check out another section. Now we have something very interesting happening here. Now if you look here, this is a mess. Yes, it is. This is a potato bed. I actually pulled out a plant right here because I saw these dying, and I said, okay, these plants are done for. It's over. It had only been 2.5 to 3 months. I put these in around April, May, June, July. Yep, so maybe 2.5 months. And I actually got some potatoes, not large, they were red potatoes, medium size, and I was starting to pull out the other plants. Decided to leave them for a bit longer to let the vines die back totally, and I don't know what did it. The only thing I sprayed on here, I put some peppermint spray earlier for bugs, because Gary Pilarchik actually recommends that on the rusted garden. He doesn't necessarily show it on potatoes, but I'll try it. You know, I'm experimenting. So I did that, and I also used some hydrogen peroxide, and these are different times, by the way. And also I used some kelp liquid. And look, what's interesting is you see all of these leaves that don't look so good. They look like they're sick and the plant is dying. But if you look right above those leaves that appear to be dying, I have healthy leaves. So this is interesting. So it seems to me that the tomato plants took a hit from some sort of infection. I don't know whether it would be bacterial or fungal. I'm sure other folks on here would have a better idea. But these plants are coming back, and I'm going to actually have more potatoes. Interesting. I thought I was going to have to deal with what was there, but this is just an interesting thing that I'm learning. Sometimes you just let nature take its course, and it works things out. You know, I have lots of birds that come around because I put fountains in. Lots of insects. Oh, I do want to show you something mentioning insects. This is a cheap little insect hotel that I got from Walmart actually last year, or the year before. I put it up last year, but I had it facing the wrong direction. It was facing west, which is where the sun shines brightly on it. I didn't notice many of the insects using it. This year, it is heavily used. When I walk past here, as it warms up, you can barely come through. I actually have on my chest in my shirt a dryer sheet. It's a trick I learned from guys who do the lawn. They said that insects don't like the fragrance for some reason, and sure enough, it actually works. Because if it was hot out here, I would not be able to walk around without that sheet, and I would still see insects everywhere. They come in and out, and if you look closely here, you'll see some of them. Now these were all hollow. Some of them are actually filled in, and the reason they're filled in is because there are bees that like to cover their space, so they will go in and they will actually cover that space so that they're protected in there. When they get ready to come out, they'll push it out and they'll go about their business, and later on they'll go back in and basically close their door. Very interesting. Now what we have here is some milkweed. Oh, by the way, I did have milkweed planted. I neglected to tell you which plants were milkweed, but there is some milkweed planted out there, and that's specifically for the monarch butterflies. I'd like to see those in addition to the swallowtails, the black swallowtails that I'm seeing. I saw a huge swallowtail caterpillar the other day, and I've seen a few of the butterflies. That makes me very happy. I have some onion sets. These I always start from seed. So this is my little overflow area. I'll just take these and stick these in the ground. Now these are some sort of, again, these are some sort of volunteer squash plant. Now I don't know, squash or zucchini. I'll find out, because I still have enough time to grow these, especially if they're zucchini, because they grow really fast. So I'll find out. I also had some crookneck squash. Those would grow fast enough for me to get some before my first freeze, which is usually around October. Last year it was pushed back until the beginning of November instead of mid-October. But as bad as these plants look, because they're soaked, and I had them in a tray here, these plants are going to stand up just fine when I put them in the ground, and I'm not worried. I'm going to put these in a little bit later to give them a chance to acclimate over the winter. And there's kale. I can stick that in the ground. That'll do just fine. You're going to find out that a lot of gardening is really just allowing nature to do what it wants. This is actually a succulent that is cold tolerant. I'm forgetting the name of it. I have to look. And I left it out over the winter. It was actually filling the whole pot. The rest died off, but these actually lived and they're flourishing. So this winter I'm actually going to leave it out and see if this spreads. I'll probably just put it into soil that's actually a little better, because this actually, wow, actually had the roots on this piece have actually dug down into the soil, and see how that does over the winter. Here's one of those easy plants. I don't do anything to it. I don't even really fertilize it. I may, now looking at it, this is actually spearmint. Just comes back by itself every single year in this pot. And as you notice, there's some small plants in there that are coming up. So nature takes care of that. Here's a plant I have a love-hate relationship with. This is lemon balm. And the reason I have a love-hate relationship with it is because, man, take this. Man, that smells so good. But this plant will grow everywhere. It'll drop seeds. For instance, let me show you something. Okay, so between my little boxwoods and my Asiatic lilies that are past bloom, by the way, those are from the little, I guess, I don't know why I should call them tubers. They're tiny, like pea-sized, but they'll grow. I've just left those in the cup. I had so many of them pop up that I didn't even want to plant them. You know, I got to even it out though, because you see I have different numbers of them, so I will spread them out so they look more even. But back to the lemon balm, there it is. It grows there. If I walk around here, we'll find small lemon balm plants everywhere, and that's why I have a love-hate relationship with it. I love the way it looks. I wish it didn't decide that it was going to spread everywhere. Now this is to show you the magic of worm castings. You might have seen my other videos where I actually have a worm farm, small home worm farm. I don't want to give you the impression this is any industrial thing. It's a few bins that I have in my basement. So I actually, this bed right here is not those worms. Those are inside the house are red wigglers, Indian blue worms, and also European night crawlers. I just got the European night crawlers and the red wigglers, but the India blue worms have done well by me for a few years. This is actually a bin that I tried to make a compost bin, and I did get it to heat up, but what I'd been doing is just dropping all kinds of kitchen waste in here. But what I've been doing is actually dropping all kinds of kitchen waste in here. No meat or anything like that. And this is the result without using any fertilizer. Again, I failed. So there is more. There's another Brussels sprout plant. I cut off the top. Look at this. This is just crazy. This is just crazy. So I just stick things in, more volunteer. This, okay, so here's one tomato plant. There's another tomato plant, and this actually has some tomato growing on it. You see that? And there's another one back there in the back. But I'm gonna cut these down. I really just don't need these many tomatoes. I just stuck these plants in. They really looked, some of them looked terrible, but they grew. This is being eaten. I don't really care. What do we have down there? Oh wow, what is that? Wait a minute, what is that down in there? Is that another Brussels sprouts? Okay, so I guess so. I gotta check that. And you see, when I say I throw things in, look. This here, oh look, tomato fell off. See? That's how I end up getting plants. Tomato fell off. I'll leave it there. Next year it'll pop up on its own. But I'm gonna cut this down, make this a little neater. I just wanted to show you. The other plants out there you saw, worm castings from the garden, bone meal, and blood meal. Those are pretty much the staples. I might throw a little fertilizer in some things. I might throw a little soil acidifier in for things like the potatoes. But worm castings have done me well. And it's easy because you basically take a lot of stuff you throw away. Shredded paper that isn't colored, cardboard, vegetables and fruits. And when you do that, the worms actually go, they digest it. Some of the worms die, but they actually deposit the castings, and I take those and put them into pots in the house and also put them out in the garden. Oh, I'm going to show you something fun in a minute. Oh, and let's see here. So here's a plant. You see it's being eaten, right? But it's still growing, and I did not plant this. This is growing in gravel. I haven't grown, this is red Russian kale. I haven't grown red Russian kale in 3 years because all of the insects attacked it. If I were to use it, it would be mainly as a decoy plant to keep the insects off the others. But this thing came up by itself. It doesn't get fertilizer. I did throw some worm castings down there when I saw that it was in the gravel, and it's still growing. It's amazing. And you see some weeds there. You see some clover. There is another lemon balm plant there. And the clover, I'll actually take this, I'll pull it up, I'll pull up the grass and these weeds, and I'll actually put them in a bin with some water. Here's celery that I just took and just threw down here because it was in the way. And I'm not going to eat that part of it. And what I'll do is I'll take these, all this stuff right here, and I'll just drop it in a bin, let it sit there for a few days, and then I'll pour that on the plants. They love that. So the free stuff that I do, taking the excess leaves and plants and weeds, putting them in water, letting them sit, pour that over, things burst. They burst into growth with that. Worm castings from my worm farm inside, using this bin. So far, this is nothing but, you see, this is one of these round bins kind of poking out, but I don't do anything as far as fertilization with these. And look at these plants. It's ridiculous, you know, it really is. So that is the outside garden. Let's take a quick look at the deck. Hey Max. Hey buddy. You surprised me, man. Uh-oh. What's Max looking for? Did you see a rabbit? Uh-oh. He smelled something. Oh boy. It's playtime. Okay Max, I gotta finish this up. Then we can play, okay buddy? Now look at this ridiculousness. This is a hydrangea. It was 2 feet tall. Looked like it was dying. It was in the front. My wife wanted it moved. I put it in the back, and I have, you wouldn't believe, I've trimmed this thing down so that it was 3 feet tall before this season. That's it. Only thing that's really feeding it, no fertilizer, is wood chips. The wood chips there. And I actually take these whenever I have to do some cleanup and I'm straightening up. I take these wood chips, because you'll see the nice fungi and stuff, and put them in the garden. And these plants are growing ridiculously. I did throw a little organic fertilizer. Yes, I did. And some soil acidifier, but look at this. This is ridiculous. I'm going to have to cut this thing now. It's a tree down. And all of this happened within the last month and a half. Here's a nice plant. Here's a nice plant that I got from Home Depot. It is a bonfire patio peach plant. I like it just because it's pretty. Now, these peaches are not edible in the sense of the taste, whether you'd enjoy them as far as what I've read, but I've heard that they're pretty good if you want to like use do peach pie or something like that. I don't know what I'm going to do because they're pretty small. I don't know. Okay, right next to that is the Keter raised bed that I made a little video on earlier, just to see how things would grow in here. Keter raised bed, and this has Miracle Grow Performance Organic Soil here. I think that's the one I used. No, let's see, Nature's Care Organic Soil. Sorry about that. And yes, I know this is lettuce. I know it's bolting. I just stuck some stuff in here to see how this bed would do. There's stevia, there's kale, and there is, let me see, which one is this? Let's see. Oh, that's rosemary. It's doing pretty good. I always have to do that because, you know, the rosemary and lavender look the same. This is doing pretty well considering the way the temperatures have been. It's just starting to really warm up. Stevia is doing well. It's bushing out because I clipped it. Over here I have some parsley and I have a couple of sunflowers. This is just stuff I just like to see things growing on the deck. And here's a marigold. There's some more lettuce that came up on its own. There's a couple of tomato plants that came up on their own. So all this stuff is going to get cut down so I can actually put stuff in that I want to grow here now, going towards the fall season. Over here is a celery plant. There we go. This is smaller than the others. You notice the stuff that's in the ground is much bigger, and this has been in here about the same time as the one in the ground. Okay, and then here is a volunteer eggplant. Now, I don't know if this is a black beauty or if this is the white knight eggplant, which is very prolific, but I'm going to grow it for a bit and see. There's lettuce that I'm going to cut down, and that is the tour of, my little growing spaces. So, hope you all got something out of this, and remember, you can grow a lot of stuff without buying a lot of stuff. If you simply reuse a lot of items that either come out of the garden or out of your house, you will have fertilizer, you will have a healthy growth. The worm castings, you can make worm tea, spray it on, and that will help keep away the bacteria, fungi, and such. A lot of stuff that you see that you purchase can actually be done better without. That's not to say that fertilizers aren't very valuable, because I do use fertilizers, but I use them very sparingly, more like, I don't know who said this, but someone said it, and I agree. I use them as an emergency measure. So if I see that there are plants that are struggling, then I will use a little liquid fertilizer. And I'll only use that maybe once or twice during the whole season. For the most part, I'm trying to be not necessarily organic, because there's a lot to that depending on who you talk to, but sustainable, and I'm trying not to use artificial means any more than necessary. So I hope you all have a good day, and thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this, and check out some of the other videos. They're going to get better over time. I am just enjoying this, actually doing it for fun, but I realized that I need to improve the aesthetics of the videos for folks who actually want more detail and also need to see things in a prettier light, because what I show you is just my raw garden, pretty much. Alright, have a good day, everybody. Hey, Max, say goodbye to the people. Say goodbye, people.